Okay, we are live now. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone, both online and in person in the boardroom on the Waterloo campus. So can I call this meeting to order this March 14th, 2022? Um, we like at 8:05 p.m. I'd like to acknowledge that the offices of the Wilfrid Laurier University Students Union are located on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. As for regrets, I received two, one from Director Bryant and one from Director Boffo, who unfortunately cannot attend today. But other than that, moving forward, can I get a motion that the Board of Directors adopt the agenda as presented? So we have a motion by Director Shando, a second by Director Vale. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none. Any oppositions? Any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving next, do we have any conflicts of interest declared today? As I see none, we can move on to our next item, which is the adoption of the consent agenda. So this will include the monitoring reports for GP2I, GP2J that has been updated since the last meeting, as well as the updated version of EL2E. So can I get a motion that the board of directors adopt the consent agenda as presented? Motion by Vice Chair Sneedy, seconded by Director Phillips. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Yes, Director Vale.
Yeah, just more for the official record. Can the financials just be popped into the actual report itself?
Yes, we can do that. So that would be the quarterly reports, correct?
Yeah, just pop it, like, just more for the record. That's it.
Yeah. So they were included in the agenda package, but it will be included in the monitor report for the record that will be saved on our own databases. Yes. Do you have any other comments or questions regarding that? No. So do we have, moving to the vote, do we have any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion passes or carries unanimously. Okay, next.
Point of order, Chair Dang, I'm just wondering if we could have everyone turn their cameras on.
Yes, if you are attending the meeting and have the ability to turn on your cameras at the moment, please turn the cameras on. Okay, awesome, thank you. It's great to see everyone's faces, especially those in person in the boardroom today. Okay, with that said, moving on to comments from the chair of the board and CGO. So I have two comments to make. First of all, today I had a conversation, and I'm going to give some updates about the board governance training that will be happening next meeting. Sorry, not next meeting, next week on March 22nd, 2022. Oh, is there any issues with the board in the boardroom right now, or are we good?
No, we're good. We're just making sure that something was
perfect.
We're good.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So in that conversation, so I had that with myself and Executive Director Champagne. So we've updated Catherine Rosso on what we'd like to see at the next board. Sorry, at the training session next Tuesday. So she will be providing us with template of slides, as well as the opportunity to inform her of any additional suggestions that we'd like to put in. So far that was what was conveyed was kind of like what the discussion we had as a board throughout this year about some of the challenges and opportunities for improvement we could see, not just in how we do governance practices, but what we found were some of the shortcomings that directors felt when they were performing their job. We had to scale back the training in the sense that it was designed initially for kind of more seasoned board directors, but we wanted to make sure that the training was sufficient for those who have zero governance experience and can cater to different backgrounds of the directors that will be serving for now into the future. So I would just say that this is an opportunity. If any other directors have any suggestions they would like to inform me or the executive director, please let us know so we can convey that to Catherine Rosso, and we'll get more information as the week progresses with that. The second is just ownership linkage ideas. So just we had the ownership linkage committee, and just had some conversations over the week with not just directors, but also the operations staff, and suggesting that with kind of like the weird hybrid nature of the of how the school year went, that a big in-person event might not be the best direction forward. But however, we were thinking that maybe providing some food or free coffee or snacks to the students, especially during the exam season, would probably be a really great idea, and kind of like, invite them to the many study spaces that we have on campus, such as the two for lounge jazz and the turn. So just thought that would be some good updates to provide there.
But Brantford, is there an idea maybe for that in Brantford as well?
Yes, absolutely. So that would be with the commuter lounge, or the equivalency of that there too. So the idea is that we would either put it out there, or we can have directors who could volunteer to go around campus with a cart and give people free coffee. And that would be pretty nice, like around the space with that the students union operates in. So more information on that will be provided as we worked out the logistics. Now I can open up for questions and comments. So I see Director Phillips, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing any of the communication for that committee, as I was added last meeting, but I haven't seen anything. I don't know.
No. These are just preliminary discussions. So just talk. It just happened that I was talking with corporations of what seems feasible given the health situation. So once that idea happens, then I'm going to bring it back to the committee and present this more in a formal idea, and then we as a committee, our job will be to help facilitate that. Does that make sense?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, I just thought it would be great because even though we have the ownership linkage committee, all board members are involved in it. So so I thought this would be a much more prudent way of doing it. Okay. Again, that concludes my updates. Does anyone have any comments for myself as chair of the board and CGO?
I do.
Yes, Vice Chair Sneedy.
I just want to thank you for facilitating this hybrid model. I know this is something you've wanted to do for a while, so I think a lot of credit is due to you for your help and support throughout these past many months. Thank you for this.
Well, I certainly do very much appreciate those warm words. Thank you, Vice Chair Sneedy. And I hope that those who are in the person will enjoy the food and pizza provided. Okay, well, if there's no other comments, sorry, Executive Director Champagne.
I just have a quick question. Is everybody amenable to, if there's pizza left, to just kind of putting it in the 2-4 lounge and allowing students to quote unquote have at it?
That is traditionally what has been done with the free food here. If directors not want to take it home.
I just want to make sure that we're good.
So yeah, President Jamaloff, I see your hands up. No, okay. We're all good then. Okay, with that being said, we can move on to the next item, which is comments from the president and CEO. So I'll pass it off to President Jamaloff now.
Okay, I wasn't going to comment, but just because we were mentioning the pizza, just because of COVID guidelines and restrictions, is that the safest idea? I've just had pizza lunches at school and like in classes since COVID, but I don't know what the restrictions are there.
We'll figure out what to do with it.
Good point.
Okay. No, good point.
Okay, so moving on. So for UA, we just had GA. It went fairly well. Plenary lasted till 7 p.m. yesterday, so could have been worse, but could have been far worse. So pretty happy about that. Everything got passed. That's kind of been where a lot of my focus was last week. Beyond that, local advocacy week is starting next week. We're getting in contact and just tying up some ends this week, getting our briefs prepared, and just following up with local city councilors to ensure dates and times. Other than that, for presidential updates, Mental Health Month has been going fairly well. We had Kiefer Collison come in last week. It was actually a really well done event. There's been the Mental Health Week updates. So every week we have like some form of programming or events. We've worked with clubs and associations. I know that there should be some stuff going on this week. Really excited. Next week we'll be having Beginners Week in the gym. So athletics has really been helping with this as well. So please, if you have any questions, just go ahead and look at that on the Instagram. It's also on your Students Union website. Our team has been working diligently as well to do our mental health in class presentations. So we've gotten a bulk of them done, a few more to come through. Otherwise, that's been most of what's been going on our end, or my end, and pretty much just catching up on stuff since I was at GA last week.
Okay, thank you so much for those comments and updates. Now we can open up the floor to questions to President Jamloff. I see we have a hand from the gallery. Nicholas, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair Deng. President Jamloff, thank you for those comments as well. I just have a question. Now, this is regarding actually a publication that was made by the CORD. I believe it was last week or this week. And I'm just wondering if I could maybe pose some of the questions and see if you have any comments. As you may or may not know, there was a story where they interviewed an executive from your team who departed early. And there's just a few concerning things that I figured I'd bring up. I hope this is an okay medium to do so. Specifically, they went out to say that they weren't feeling they were treated well, and quoting that they were never once asked, "How are you doing?" Also mentioning that their mental health was an issue, getting support throughout the term, saying, quote, "I brought up some concerns I was having in regards to mental health to the president and was basically brushed off despite your campaign's promises to mental health." Finally, they mentioned that the transparency within the students union just wasn't quite there when it came to students' publication, saying, quote, "Jamloff was very adamant that no one was speaking to student publications." A comment was requested from you, but you didn't make one. So I'm hoping that maybe you can answer, number one, how do you plan to ensure that this doesn't happen to any other members on your team or anyone else within the students union? And also, how do you plan on ensuring complete transparency for the student body, despite your advocacy against speaking to student publications?
So I'd like to go discuss this in camera. I'm happy to make any comment to the board in camera. As for what those former employees have discussed anonymously, that is also something that I believe is HR oriented, and I'd like to leave it at that. Anything in relations to student publications, it's been a very hard relationship, and because of that, I don't feel comfortable making comments to them, and I haven't the entire year, and that wasn't going to change anything. So I hope that that's a sufficient answer for now. I apologize that I can't go into more detail.
No problem. And the hope is possibly sometime in the near future, would it be possible to get some kind of comment or something made public to the student body?
There will be comment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have anyone else who would like to be added on the speakers list for comments and questions to President and CEO? If not, then we can thank President Jamloff for her time, and then move on to comments from the Executive Director and COO.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add beyond the report that was submitted as part of the agenda package. I would like to welcome you guys officially back to campus. I look forward to a time when there's more opportunity for more people to be in the boardroom, as well as the boardroom on the Brantford campus. Other than that, it's been fairly kind of business as usual as we work our way through the semester. I know that the weather is going to be changing fairly dramatically over the course of the next 3 or 4 days. So I would ask that students make smart choices, consented choices, etc. on Thursday when the weather is unprecedentedly high. I know that it is typically a day of celebration, but I just am asking the students that are hearing these words to make smart choices. That's all. Other than that, happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you, Executive Director Champagne. Do we have any questions or comments? Yes, I see President Young.
Yeah, apologies. I also just forgot to indicate, and Phil has just reminded me, we have been working with the GSA to come up with our own kind of commentary towards Thursday's events, just also pushing that messaging from the university that Thursday is still a regular school day, and students are expected to be in class, as well as going to advocate or publish resources available, such as those within Sarah Scanlon's offices for ensuring consent is golden, and those types of resources are broadcasted.
Okay. Thank you for those additional comments. And I see your hand is up. Secretary Champagne.
Yeah, just quick add, if students want to make the choice to have some adult beverages on Thursday and they have class, I would just encourage them to try to be as non-disruptive to that class as possible.
Okay. Again, opening up the floor for any or speakers for any other comments or questions, Executive Director. As I see now, we can thank Executive Director Champagne for his comments and also his sentiments to be safe and on the upcoming celebrations, if those choose to partake this week. Okay, next we can move on to our next agenda item, which is the institutional agreement extension request. So I would like to invite all directors to have to look at the briefing note if they haven't already done so. So this briefing note is a bit more specific in terms of there's 2 motions that are required. So that would be to endorse the 1-year extensions for both the operating procedures agreement as well as the student affairs administrative agreement. Requiring the necessary signatures at the bottom of the chair and board CGO, the president CEO, as well as the executive director and COO. So we can open up the floor for any questions. Since this is a bit more of an operational type of question, I will redirect those to executive director or Ian Muller. But in terms of speakers, I see Director Vail, you have your hand up.
Yeah, no, I think both are pretty straightforward requests. I think just they make sense in the context. So I'll go ahead and start with moving the first motion that the board of directors endorse a 1-year extension of the operating procedures agreement with Wilfrid Laurier University for the purposes of further negotiations.
Perfect. So we have the mover. Do we have a seconder? I see Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? And Director Shandok, would you like to speak to? Oh, sorry. Would you like to add any further comments and discussion? Nope. Okay, so if there's no further comments and no one wants to speak to the motion, any oppositions? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. And I guess next we can move on to the second motion, which is the motion that the board of directors endorse the 1-year extension for the student affairs administrative agreement with the university for purposes of further negotiations. So we have Director Vail. And do we have a seconder, Director Phillips? Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. And before we move on, just for the record, so the documents pertaining to the briefing note, the operating procedures agreement, as well as the student affairs agreement, administrative agreement, are on Teams. So for directors who would like to peruse, they were requested and have been provided to the board as such. Okay. Next, moving on, we have the Finance Committee updates. So I'll pass it off to the chair of that committee, Director Vail.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't have apologies. I don't have the report in front of me, but in essence, as you may recall, we deferred this report, approval of this report at the last meeting, just to allow some time for discussion, with the operational staff involved in the finances of the organization. And we've sort of sorted out to make sure that our recommendations are kind of clear and understood. And so I think we'll kind of go ahead with approving that. And then I would also add that the Finance Committee, hopefully in time for the next meeting, we'll have come back with some sort of policy recommendations, just potentially on some changes. Like one thing we're kind of maybe looking at is changing the reporting period to an academic end on the academic term, just because it makes more sense in terms, when we get our receivables, and just might be a little bit easier. So kind of some housekeeping cleanup like that sort of thing that just might make more sense to the organization. But that's, like I said, that's kind of to come. So the motion, if they're all entertained, maybe any questions or?
Yeah, just also opening up to any other members of the Finance Committee, would they like to add any other additional comments? Okay. I'll add just one additional comment as a member. So just for context of what the house cleaning items that the chair of the committee, Director Vail, was mentioning, is that the reports so far are sent to the board in a quarterly fashion, but they don't really line up with the kind of the cash flow nature of our institution, which is like a fall term, winter term, and a spring/summer term. In terms of when students actually like enter and pay for services. So we're just doing that to actually make it a lot more, to make more sense with what our organization does, which is to oversee the finances. And the requested reports that were requested by the finance committee have been provided in the agenda package too as well.
Yeah.
So that was
And
the
it just,
October
so in
31st.
the intent would be, the committee will kind of take a deeper dive just in the policy and kind of bring back some, so certainly one we're gonna be looking at is, the reporting period, but some other ones that maybe make sense, and we'll certainly, connect with the operational resources just to ensure that they make sense and that they're sort of, they can be reasonably implemented before we ultimately bring them back to the board for approval. So if there's no questions, I guess I'll go ahead and make a motion that the board approve the reports and the recommendations contained therein, and that the, I guess, future reports sort of be directly kind of consist of those recommendations.
Okay, so we have the mover, which is Director Vale. Do we have a seconder? Director Shando, would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, so now we can move on to our next agenda item, which is the Direct Inspection Committee GP 2K final report. So that will be by Director Shandok. So I'll pass it off to him as the chair.
Thank you, Chair. Me and the other members, we met on March 14th to talk about the GP2K. We went through all the guidelines and we had no sessions as everything was in policy. So far, we have no recommendations. If we meet again, we'll update you guys.
Okay, perfect. So as the chair committee stated, the committee did not find any recommendations to change the policy. So I guess we can move to a motion. So can get that motion that the board of directors adopts the recommendations or the report of the Direct Inspection Committee GP2K. So motion by Director Shandok, seconded by Director Del Giudice. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? Do we have any discussion necessary on the from boardroom? Nope. Okay, we're good. Any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. Okay. Next, we're going to go to our in-camera session. So we're actually quite early on time here, which is very nice for once. So can I get a motion that the board of directors go in camera with the president, CEO, the executive director, as well as our director of policy, research, and advocacy, Ian Muller, with the board secretary. Motion by Director Shando, seconded by Vice Chair Sneedy. Would you like to speak to your motion? Any discussion on the matter? As I see none, do we have any opposition? Any abstentions? The motion carries unanimously. So at this point, I'd like to thank all the members of the gallery for attending. I'm asking some really insightful questions at the board of directors meeting, and we will see you at the next meeting, which will be on March 28th, 2022 at 8 p.m. So with that, I have a great night, and for remaining board members, we will now migrate to Teams to conduct the in-camera session. Have a great night, everyone.